This is Duke University.
I went to 10 parties last night. I went briefly to 10 parties last night. I feel like I am now a connoisseur of the different partying styles of the different generations of Dukies. And I'd have to say, it was just so much fun to see all the people come back here, how happy people were to be at Duke, a place that had meant something so crucial in the lives of all these people, to see them back in the company of people they'd known here first, who became their lifelong friends, one of the enrichments of their life. So it's just like a family reunion when people come back here. Let me just say a few words. The Duke you return to, so beautiful. We have these genetically engineered tulips that only open when you approach the campus. The current Duke, so desirable. You have heard we had 29,700 applicants for next year's entering freshman class. This is an 11% increase since last year and a 54% increase in the last 5 years. And why wouldn't a person want to come here? It's so beautiful, but there's something you can't really see on a Saturday morning. You can see it at lots of other times of the week, that this is a place just brimming with happy energy, brimming with talent, brimming with spirit. I just think of things that have happened to me. Everybody would have their own examples over the last week or 10 days or so. The last time I was in Page, you know Jane Goodall, the person who lived with the chimpanzees in Gombe, the person who learned that chimps fashion and use tools, which was not previously thought to be true, that chimps are able to organize groups into group conflict like warfare, that wasn't previously thought to be true. Jane Goodall, who took 50 years worth of notes, which are one of the principal means by which we know about primates besides humans, gave all her research archive to Duke about 10 days ago. She came here, gave a marvelous speech here. She gave it to Duke because this is one of the principal places for primate studies. And when she came, it was so fun to see our faculty admired by her, to see our students who are into these subjects also so admired by her, and what a great resource for the future. This past week, I had a group of 3 students come to my office with their coaches. This spring alone, 3 Duke undergraduates have achieved individual national championships in sporting events. The National Diving Award for Springboard was won by a Duke student, Abby Johnston. A diving award for platform by a Duke student named Nick McCrory. His father went to Duke, if you can fathom that. In fencing, the Sabre Award won by Rebecca Ward, whose name you may know because she won the bronze medal at the last Olympics. So like an ordinary day at Duke, you know, like no one's better than you, so of course you would be here. But when these people come in, what did they want to tell me? Becca Ward told me she's not going to compete in the 2012 Olympics because fencers can fence for a long time, and she wanted to concentrate on her academics while she's here. She's doing Duke Engage this summer. She's a public policy major. The other 2 students, student athletes, but both of them are also pre-med. That wonderful combination of athletics and academics that we love so much here, perfectly exemplified by each of them. One of the high points of this spring for me, you know the name of Bill Riley. He was the environmental policy director, agency director in the first President Bush administration, and I think most widely admired in bipartisan terms for his work on the environment. You know he led the study of the oil spill and its causes and consequences, and the first public speech he gave in the aftermath of that, he gave at Duke because he's attached to this place. He's the head of the Board of Visitors of the Nicholas Institute of Environmental Policy Solutions. When he came and somebody pulled the, oh, here we go again. It was a shocking moment of suspense. When he came and gave that talk, I couldn't get at him after the talk because an interviewer for the Chronicle was interviewing him. The person wrote an excellent story. 3 nights ago, I went to see the dress rehearsal of a play called The Laramie Project, and there was the student interviewer as an actor in that play because he is a student of the environment, but of course that doesn't mean he isn't also a student of the theater. He'd had a teacher who took a company of students all term long to study where it came from, how it got written, the history of its reception, and then at the end they put it on. That's a pretty fun thing to do if you're a student. Thursday night, David Rubenstein of the class of, what's his class, 1970? Okay, he went into government, went into a law firm. He says he wasn't any good at that, so he had to found his own company. This became Carlyle, which now has $60 billion under investment. He came back to tell students what it's like to found your own company and why it's infinitely more satisfying than working for somebody else's company. Of course, we had 200 students in the audience, but they listened to him with moderate interest because they see themselves as the David Rubenstein of their generation. They all intend to go found their own ventures of this sort or another because this is a campus that now has lots of entrepreneurial activity and leadership as well. So what I'm saying is, when you come back here, it's more than the tulips. When you come back here, it's really about a place that's just infinitely rich in opportunity that every year is able to attract terrifically talented, engaging students who realize those opportunities for themselves, and we call that their education. When you give the money that's represented by these checks on stage, I want you to remember, you don't just give that to Duke, you're giving that so that we can offer that kind of range of opportunity to the students who come here, so they can get the kind of education for which they express their gratitude when they come back for their reunions. So again, I say thanks. Let me just fill you in a little about the current state of the university. You know that a couple of years ago, Duke, like the rest of the world, went through an extraordinary a moment of economic reversal. You heard from me about what happened to our endowment, the second best performing endowment in America over the last 10 years. Like everyone, suffered reverses. But just to quickly update you, I think when you come here now, we are really past that point in our history of having to cope with that. And I'd say a couple of things about how we did cope with it. One, the years before the downturn were years of unprecedented prosperity for Duke. And one thing that it's important to understand is that Duke did not just spend all that money. Duke spent the money we got in ways that made permanent differences for this place, in ways that permanently strengthened this university. Sterling mentioned, have you been to Perkins Library yet? Please try to remember exactly what it was like, and then have someone cover your eyes, and then walk you over there, and then go in and look at it. It is completely transformed, beautifully traditional on the outside, magnificently new on the inside, doubled in size, all the wonders of technology on display there. Use of the library at Duke increased 40% within the first week after the rebuilt library was done. You don't have to rebuild your library every year. We already did it when we had the money, and so we had it when we didn't have the money. Similarly, if you have been to the new engineering building called CMAS, this opened 6 years ago, it's an amazing facility. When you had that kind of building, you could hire a new kind of faculty to engineering here, which meant you could also attract a new kind of student to engineering here. And now this place has really moved to the forefront in many fields, including biomedical research, thanks to the investments that were made on this campus in days of prosperity. I think of the Nasher Museum. Which class had its party there last night? Was it 86? I think it was 86. Oh, I should mention your classes by name more often so you can all applaud in that little way. The Nasher Museum was a field of weeds 10 years ago. Now it's a museum. The last exhibit that left here went to London to the Tate, and then on its way on to Venice to the Peggy Guggenheim Museum. The second last exhibit that left is going to the Institute for Contemporary Art in Boston. Exhibits didn't used to do that at Duke, if you know what I mean. Duke is now a center for the arts in an altogether different way from what was true 5 or 6 years ago. We built that when we had the money, and then we had it when we didn't have the money. So you get my point. The investments we made this place permanently strengthened. The second thing I'd say is, when the downturn came, this university stepped up to the problem in a way that I think is not shared by every university in America. Right away, we figured we would have to take about $100 million out of our $2 billion budget. Everyone agreed that this was necessary for the health of the university. We identified all kinds of efficiencies. We had a voluntary retirement program, but no large layoffs. Putting all these things together, we got about $80 million out of the budget in a 2-year period with very little sense of trauma or crisis on campus. And something you may or may not know, The employees of this university are about to get a raise this year, but there was no raise at Duke last year, and there was no raise the year before, because people understood a 2% raise for everybody who worked at Duke meant you would have to lay off 200 or 250 people to make the balance come out right. And people at this university were happy to embrace the choice of taking some personal sacrifice to themselves to guarantee the health of the organism as a whole. There's a kind of maturity and civic sense in this university that you didn't find just everywhere, and that helped us get through this time too. But the third thing I'd say, and this is the one I'd really have stick in your mind, is that even in the middle of the downturn, we didn't stop doing things. Hardy rattled off a list of things that we've accomplished over the years, but an interesting thing is some of Duke's most ambitious and innovative ventures were originated during the recession. Everyone knows that China is a big part of the world nowadays. Whatever industry you go into, China is going to have a role in the nature of that business. A student who's preparing now for life in the next generation had better understand the world in which China is one of the definers of the force fields. There's a city in China called Kunshan. It's next door to Shanghai. It's the city in China with the highest per capita income and the highest concentration of high-tech industry. They don't have higher education there. They came to Duke and they have offered a 200-acre piece of land, and they've offered to build buildings to our specifications at their expense, in which we're going to offer not a big undergraduate program. That's the hardest thing to do. First, we're going to offer business management classes to a place that deeply needs management skills. We're going to offer environmental management courses to a place with massive environmental challenges. And we're going to be offering global health instruction courses at a place with many health challenges. So that will be a service that Duke renders, but we will get the benefit because our faculty who go there will then be able to come back here and teach students from a point of view in which sometimes you see things from the American face, but sometimes you see things from an international face, just the skill our students will need in future. The January of the last 2 years, undergraduates returning to school in significant numbers have come back before classes started for a new event called Winter Forum. Each year we've thrown out a subject and invited people. This year the Global Health Program ran it. And what they did, these are people who've worked all around the world in these issues, they simulated a pandemic. We have these things, SARS, avian flu, these things that come along. People working here simulated in considerable detail a scenario in which an epidemic would start somewhere, there would begin to be high rates of mortality, and it would begin traveling quickly around the world. We had students all last term study on their own bodies of knowledge that would be relevant to that matter, but then when they came to campus, we threw a situation at them, and people had to take roles and they had to respond in real time. You had to figure out, how do you identify what the virus is that's causing this? What steps can you take to get a vaccine created most quickly? What steps can you take to make the vaccine affordable, since typically vaccines can be best afforded by countries that don't have the outbreaks? We had the local news channels doing scary TV coverage of this whole thing. Update, update. President Brodhead was at death's door in Shanghai in one of these things. And so then the team has to go to work, not just studying things academically, but in real time, teams of people trying to figure the answers to urgent problems in situations where the facts are changing, uncertain, different an hour later from what they were a while ago. We see this as an example of a new model of education that Duke is really pushing, in which we don't only want students to know how to study things in an academic sense, we want them to know how to take academic learning out into the service of solving real-world problems in real time. We want our faculty to come together and see themselves not as the person on the stage who teaches students, but as people who work side by side in teams with students across many disciplines. And at this thing, we had people from medicine, from nursing, from public policy, from the law school. I don't even remember all of the ones who were there, just in a community of learners working together to use knowledge to solve problems. In the last few years, we've launched an energy program, an entrepreneurial program, one thing after another going along. And from these, I would say this. Duke has not tried to add new features or programs just to have novelties. We've tried to make each of these things be an answer to the question, what do students need to learn nowadays? What are you going to need to be equipped to do if you're going to live in the world in the next couple of decades? And how can we make a Duke education begin to give you the skills now you're going to need to have to be a productive citizen of your time later on? And what I think is especially striking to me is Duke did not use the downturn as an excuse. We did not use the lack of money as an excuse not to do things or not to make progress. We used the downturn as a spur to inventiveness, a spur to be more imaginative about how to use the resources we have to give the best educational result we can. And now it appears the weather is improving, if not outside, at least economically. And I say that because I had the pleasure on March 7th of this year of receiving the single largest gift ever given to Duke University. This was a check for $80 million given to us by the Duke Endowment of Charlotte for the purpose of totally rehabilitating the West Union, Page Auditorium, and Baldwin. I look around you and I ask you, is this the most splendid auditorium you have ever been in? Think of the rooms I just mentioned. These are not marginal buildings. These are the common spaces of Duke University. These are the places where people eat. They're the place where students do organized activities. This is the place where you hear a great speaker, a Jane Goodall. This is the place where you hear a great concert or see a great play. These ought to be memorable spaces. They have not been memorable for many years. So what we're going to do is keep the beautiful outsides and totally transform the insides and make these the best places of community and the best places of activity on any campus that there is. And so I'm telling you, when you come back here in 5 years, please come back to Page Auditorium, and it will be so fun to look around and see what has happened to this place between now and then. But again, I'd say to you, refurbishing buildings is fun, but of course the only reason you do it is for the sake of the human experience that's made possible. One of my famous lines at this university is, facilities exist to facilitate. So we're not doing West Union to have it be nicer, we're doing it so that the world of social exchange, the very element of education, can take place at the highest level. We'll have this so that the world of entering into artistic performance and the education through great speakers will take place at the highest possible level. And every day, every student at this place will have their experience improved by these methods. I trust that when you come back here, you see lots of things that you know have been added that are great improvements to this place. But I'll close by saying what Sterling said. We try to make this place better and better and better year by year, but in a way, we try to make it better so we can better do the very same activity we've done since the school was first founded. And you know what that is, attracting talented young people, exposing them to very bright and interesting contemporaries who will become their friends, exposing them to great, challenging, and dedicated teachers, having them have all those experiences by which people discover what their passions and powers really are in the world, and then sending them forward to do the things that college graduates are needed to do in the world. That's what we've done here for a long time. That's what we did when you came here, and it's in name of your gratitude to that experience that you are back here today, I presume, and with your help, that's what we will continue to do for our students now and long into the future. Thank you so much.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.